Hi everyone, thanks all for coming. It's good to see a healthy turnout on this. We gave a similar version of the same talk at the Journalism Festival in Perugia a couple of weeks ago. We got a lot of interest there, and we hope to have a big debate with all of you later. And I will briefly say what we'll be talking about today. So I just did this panel with Margarete Vestager over there, the EU Commissioner for Competition. We talked about the big digital companies, the Googles and the Facebooks of this world and their influence. And now we will kind of move to a smaller subset of this big question, namely, what is the influence of these companies over journalism? I mean, journalism is the fourth power, and so in some ways it should rate as important. So let me go into what I was going to say. Well, the big tech companies have become crucially important for the news media. So everyone here who's in the media industry, worked there, knows this. The products are increasingly intertwined with news production, with news delivery. For all intents and purposes, they form what is an operating system for journalism. So tech products are a must-have for publishers. They drive users to your website, like the Facebook news feed, like Google Search or News. They help you to count your users. You can do that with Google Analytics or any number of other products. They help you to monetize your content through advertising. They offer you mobile-optimized hosting with Google AMP. And since recently, they also offer subscription services. But they also are sponsors and patrons to journalism. And this is a relationship we will tell you more about in a short while. But first, let me say a few words about business, journalism, and big tech. News media depends on platforms, as I mentioned, in many different ways. Facebook and Google especially have been important in driving users to news websites. For the past decade or so, Facebook has been a key driver of traffic for news companies, and this kind of even created a job title in newsrooms that wasn't there before, the social media editor. So essentially, this is a person that works for both the medium and the tech company. It's in some ways a very weird role. We can say that if you're looking for new audiences, the platforms are unavoidable from the view of the publishers, but more about that, as I said, later. This is the first slide I want to show you. This is the position of Facebook and Google on the advertising market. Recently, Amazon also entered the world of digital advertising. This is the market, one could say, they took from news media companies, because before there was the two big companies and their monopoly, news media had a very large share in advertising, in print advertising, but also in online advertising. And that was their revenue they were hoping for to sustain their business model. So when that broke away, that really put news publishers in a very bad way. Exactly. And well, Google and Facebook have built the ad tech infrastructure of the web. Many news websites use their technology to monetize their content, and in the past decade or so, news media have become from kind of competitors of the large corporations to their clients. This is a cookie that the European Data Protection Supervisor baked. So, as I said, news websites are more than just clients and customers for the platforms. They also help the platforms sustain their dominance. And the way they do this is, we recently looked at news websites in Germany, in German-speaking countries, and looked at how many of these websites had cookies from either Google or Facebook in them, or other ways these companies used to track users. And I think it was 4/5 of them had. There's a Google Analytics is the tool, like websites, news websites, other websites use it to monitor how many people go on the website. And that in some ways also gives up data to Facebook, to Google, to look at, to help them sustain their kind of internet spanning network of tracking and targeted advertising. So in some ways, the news media have become accomplices to the business model of Google and Facebook and eroding the very basis of online advertising many of them still engage in. This is a table from data from a report by the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism in Oxford. So last year, after GDPR came into force, they looked at how many news websites they had. I think a set of 200 dominant news websites in many European companies, and they looked at how many of them had Google, Facebook or Amazon tracking cookies or other kind of devices in their website. So you can see that a whopping 96% of news websites, of the 200 largest, most dominant, most important news websites in Europe, use some kind of Google tracking. And that means, you know, news media cannot legitimately, or it's very hard for many news media to legitimately cry out against the targeting practices, the nefarious advertising power of Google when they themselves are part of it. Last year, Google launched Subscribe with Google. This is Olivia Ma, the director of the Google News Lab. She was speaking at the International Journalism Festival last month. Google sponsors that festival, but they also use it to promote their product. Subscribe with Google is a service where media can acquire subscribers directly through Google. So you go to a news media website and say, I want to become a subscriber. Instead of filling out the very long, boring form, you click on the button, subscribe with Google. It's very easy. But we also assume that it ends up with the platform company hoovering up even more data and becoming even more important for journalism. So Apple News Plus is Apple's take on the very same problem. It has been termed Netflix for news, because in the current version you pay Apple $10 a month and you get access to many different websites and their content. But what does it mean if Apple becomes a kind of meta publisher for many different publishers? And we were told that Apple takes a 50% cut. So in some ways the philosophy is a bit different from Google, but both companies aim to dominate. After having taken the market for digital advertising, they aim to dominate the market for digital subscriptions as well. So I just talked a bit about the business relationship between media and tech. For the past few years, Google has sponsored European media with 150 million euros as part of the Digital News Initiative, which was recently rebranded into the Global News Google News Initiative, which is global. Facebook just a couple of months ago pledged to also give 300 million euros for media companies globally. Is it philanthropy? Is it a kind of product support? What is this money? Let's talk a bit about this strange relationship. But first, a few words about tech, money, and journalism. It has become very ubiquitous. Jeff Bezos is the founder and CEO of Amazon. He famously bought the Washington Post, among other things. Pierre Omidyar is the founder of eBay. He pours hundreds of millions of euros into journalism via his Omidyar Foundation. Among other things, he sponsors The Intercept, where Glenn Greenwald exposes government surveillance, corporate surveillance, I don't know. But Craig Newmark, who founded Craigslist, a website that has been basically responsible for the collapse of classified advertising in newspapers in the US. He's now sponsoring everything from journalism schools to whole media ventures. So these are the kind of tech moguls who now put their more or less philanthropical interest to journalism. In some ways their business interest, but now on to Google. So last year we did a long investigation into the Google News Initiative. We looked at 450 projects they sponsored in Europe. We looked at what were they funding, who were they giving money to, what kind of media organizations get the money. As I said, they pledged 150 million for European publishers in 2015, and they since have ramped up this figure to make this a global model. So what they did in Europe has become a model for the whole earth, and what Google did has become a model for Facebook. So let me just quickly walk you to some of the things we found. This is our method. So we built this database, as I said. We looked at who got the money. To be fair, we could only look at the first 4 rounds. There have now been 6. But we also interviewed a lot of people who got the money. We interviewed people who are on the board. We talked to Google as far as they would talk with us. We interviewed academics. I think we have a quite holistic picture of Google's news initiative. So we found a couple of biases in the way they pour out their funding. A big one has been they fund mainly Western European media projects. They fund mainly large commercial media. We looked at the median age of these media companies. The median age of these media companies is like 1997. And we also looked at what they're funding, what for Google is innovation, because what they say is we don't fund journalism per se, we fund innovation in journalism. And what we found largely confirms the picture that we had, that they are giving money to the largest publishers in Europe to keep them on side, to not rebel against their increasing dominance. They make nice summits and events and conferences. They schmooze with the publishers. They have nice cocktail parties. And suddenly the publishers who years ago talked about Google taxes, in Germany you had the debate about Leistungsschutzrecht, however misguided that was, the publishers were openly and aggressively agitating to in some way tax the massive advertising revenue of Google and Facebook and put it to their purposes, fund journalism with that money. And that debate in many European countries has kind of died down. So Google's news initiative has worked. I will now hand over to Adrienne, who will walk you a bit through the relationship that Google sustains with the publishers.
Thank you, Alexander. Yes, so most of these various tools and programs Alexander has already mentioned, but I just give you a quick overview about the Google media ecosystem for publishers. So Digital News Initiative, Alexander has already talked about, is about products funding, is about training and research, tracking, analytics, advertisement. This is something probably you're more familiar with. You might know the Google DoubleClick program, the AdSense program. It's something online publishers use DoubleClick to display adverts on their websites. So you might have heard about that as well. Accelerated Mobile Pages is a publishing technology developed by Google for traffic increase and better user experience because of the improved loading time. And that was introduced some years ago. And of course, for the user, it's a very good service. It's very convenient, but it's also a way for Google to get also some more data about what is interesting, what is interesting for readers. And there is no clear evidence that accelerated mobile pages was boosting traffic for publishers. There's no clear evidence yet. Subscribe with Google, Alexander has already mentioned, is a service where the media can acquire subscribers directly through Google. Also, here once more, very convenient for the users, for the readers. But yeah, for Google, just probably one way to getting more data. And also festivals to sum up that. Conferences, festivals, it's almost impossible to attend a news conference hearing about...
journalism conference, yeah.
A journalism conference, hearing about experimentation in newsrooms or even look at the journalism research without seeing Google's name on the funding credits, such as the International Journalism Festival in Perugia, you already mentioned, or other conferences. So I would like to talk now about the publisher's perspective. I think you forgot to mention that the investigation about the Google News Initiative was actually a common project led in the lead, Netzpolitik, but
Right.
Republik, sorry, Republik was covering the part in Switzerland, and the magazine Falter in Austria was covering and investigating the Austrian part, because, as we know, all publishers from Europe have applied, or all the big publishers were applying for the Google News Initiative. So let me just talk about that first. So I was talking to all the publishers in Switzerland, and they told me that for them, they applied for this funding for the Google News Initiative because they see it as a way as having a strategic dialogue with Google. Because before, they had no link to Google, they had no one to talk with, they felt powerless, they felt dependent. And right now, it's having to have at least some conversation with Google going on and don't feel that powerless anymore. They frame it also that it is a way of getting something back from the big tech companies. Also, I realized that there's a big cleavage between the publishers and also the journalists about this topic. There's little conversation about that. The technology and media reporters I was talking to, they felt intrigued. They told me, of course, Google is only funding technical infrastructure, tools or software, but it's clear that this is also shaping aspects of the editorial content as well. The publishers on the other side have told me, well, Google has no influence on editorial decisions. It's only about technical infrastructure. So among the publisher side, I think there's little awareness about that, also little awareness about how this Google funding might also have an impact on the reader's trust in the end. And also, they were talking openly about it, that they were applying for Google News Initiative, but they were not open about saying the exact numbers of funding. So that was quite of a forensic work for all of us, I guess. So third, easy money. It's the project manager I was talking to that told me there's only little bureaucracy if you apply for the money, there's little bureaucracy. It's actually an easy way to get some funding. There is only little quality monitoring after the project is launched. And so that's why they applied for several rounds already and will do it in the future as well. And the question remains, or this needs some further investigation and research, is there a change in media coverage about the Google News Initiative between 2015 and 19, or between 2015 and 2019, because that is the period when the Google News Initiative was launched in Europe. So we don't know yet. It might have an impact. Maybe the journalists were reporting differently about this topic. We don't know. But what we do know is that the Digital News Report in 2018, published by the Reuters Institute, have shown that they made a survey among the publishers, and the publishers were saying among all platform companies, they have the most positive relationship to Google among all platform companies, such as Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and so on. They think most positive about the relationship to Google. So let's talk about another complicated relationship, the relationship between Facebook and the publishers. We see here Mark Zuckerberg also becoming a journalist right now, so he started to do a series of interviews. He also starts, I heard he starts his own podcast right now about the impact of technology to society, so looks like he also wants to step into this role. This relationship is also a complicated one, and I want to talk about it a little bit because Facebook is the second largest funder of journalism. So this relationship started in 2013 when Mark Zuckerberg has announced he wants Facebook to be the personalized newspaper for everyone in the world. So you get up in the morning, you open your Facebook app, and you see all the news your Facebook friends have shared. And you are well informed. So this is how he pushed that, and he pushed that through algorithmic changes in the newsfeed. So the newsfeed was favorizing all kinds of news. And it was for the publishers from 2013 to 2017, it was kind of a golden era. There was a huge increase of traffic shares via social media. Mostly, all of the traffic came from the Facebook app. And yeah, so we got a kind, I can say I was the social media editor in this time at the NZZ, Neue Zürcher Zeitung, so I could see really the rise of traffic share, and it was kind of a free doping. We became more dependent of Facebook. The newsroom started to hire social media editors to build social media teams, and were planning around the news feed. So what happened then? Due to the whole fake news debate, and due to the increasing polarization on Facebook, and due to the increasing public pressure, Mark Zuckerberg has tweaked again the newsfeed algorithm, has changed it. In the early 2018, he said, okay, we want to deprioritize less meaningful news content, whatever that means. And, well, what happened then, among all publishers, there was the traffic started to drop and to decrease more and more. So publishers, since 2 years, are losing traffic via Facebook and suffering from that. And they're also suffering from another thing. So Facebook started to put an effort to recognize political advertising, because they said, okay, we have now this scandal going on about fake news, about disinformation, about sponsored content, negative campaigning. So we need to train our systems what is actually really what is political advertising and what not. So they asked the crowd, the users, to flag political advertising. And what happened then? The users saw some sponsored postings from online publishers and were flagging it as political advertising. So it led to a kind of a collateral damage, because then these postings were blocked by the systems. And it was blocked until a content moderator were approving them. So this is the complicated story of the last years. In a nutshell, you see here, it already started in February 2017. Here, Facebook had already made a little change in the Facebook newsfeed. That was after Mark Zuckerberg was recognizing that Facebook might have played a role in the US election in 2017, because before he said that he thinks that it is a pretty crazy idea. And here he was kind of recognizing, okay, might have played a role. Also, the user feedback was, there's too much toxic content, too much news. I want to see more Facebook postings of my friends. And here was the official announcement in January 2018 about the news content. So, what's next? Now we're back on the topic. It's also about Facebook started to become now a large funder of the Facebook local journalism project, as Alexander already said, and it's about money, $300 million funding within 3 years. The difference is now that it's not about the Google News initiative you can apply for any project. You can build a tool for your website, and you might get the money there. Difference is to Facebook. Facebook wants to help you to understand their tools better. So it's about organizing training and workshops, how to get more reach and traffic engagement with their tools. And also they want to focus on the local news, because the user feedback was that the users are trusting more to their local news. The question in this respect remains. So what I'm asking myself, but this needs another discussion, is we publishers and journalists were taught to promote our content on Facebook, to invest into sponsored postings, to reach broader audiences, to reach more publicity, to reach more people. And now, what do we have? We're going to have now a strategic, there's going to be a change in the strategy of Facebook. Everything is getting more private, it's getting more, there's going to be a tighter technical or deeper integration of Facebook Messenger, of WhatsApp, of Instagram, and so on. It's going to be more focused on Facebook communities, Facebook groups, and this is a total paradox. That's not working together. How does this fit together, in my opinion? So we will see that in the future. So, starting now with our conclusion, or why do we think that this development right now is wrong? Why do we think that the big tech companies should not be the largest funders of journalism? Just bear in mind, Facebook and Google have committed to more than $500 billion to various journalistic programs and media partnerships in the last 3 years. So Facebook and Google are the largest funders of journalism in the world right now. And as Alexander said, the Google News Initiative was kind of a direct response to the pressure by the regulators of the European Union. So it is a kind of a PR instrument right now. Many publishers see it as guilt money. They say it's something journalism deserves. It's something they deserve it because Google and Facebook have wrecked their business, and also we already saw this number before. Google and Facebook will account 85% of the global digital ad market. So the more financially stressed the media industry gets, the more hungrier the publishers are getting for any kind of money. So what does it mean if innovation in the newsroom is more and more driven by the funding of Google and Facebook? It means that we think more and more about what would Google want next, and we develop products and tools into this direction. And we also need to think about what is the core of their business. I mean, do they really care? Do big tech companies really care about journalism? The core of platform companies is software engineering. Media are not the core of their business, or to say it in the words of Emily Bell, media are the planet Pluto in their solar system. And furthermore, I guess we need to really think about what's happening. Facebook, Apple, and Google do things every week that journalists should investigate and not profiting from. Executives from Facebook, Google, and Twitter have been called to testify in front of Congress, the EU Parliament, the Brussels Parliament, in response to concerns around misinformation and data breaches. So what's going on right now? We just have a little knowledge about these algorithms. We don't know why some news are banned, why some headlines are shown in the search results or not. We don't have little information about that. And it's crucial to have independent tech reporting as a vital form of accountability. I think we need to hold big tech accountable. And also these programs, I guess, like the Google News Initiative and the Facebook Local Journalism Project are strategies from the big tech companies to manage the press. And now I give the word back to Alexander.
Excellent, very well put, Adrienne. Yeah, so I think it's exactly as Adrienne says. So my take on this is also that, to some extent, Google and Facebook, the platform companies, they are grooming media for their dominance, making the world safe for Google and Facebook. And they leverage their funding, their quasi-philanthropic funding, which comes out of a corporate budget. It doesn't come from a foundation to influence the business relationship they have with publishers. That was what we must assume. So they accumulate soft power, as the concept by political scientist Joseph Nye put it. And I think there needs to be a sort of paradigm shift. So 10 years ago, Jeff Jarvis, a journalism professor, wrote a book called What Would Google Do? And he said, well, media companies need to be like tech companies. They need to be disruptive. They need to take new approaches. And I think that culturally, that was the wrong idea. I think media shouldn't become more like tech companies. They should think critically about the effect of tech companies. So there's a classical counter-argument to what we've been saying. we were at the Journalism Festival in Perugia, and our co-panelist asked, well, but you know, what other money is there? So a lot of media are struggling. Tech companies offer kind of free money, money for nothing, but we know there is no such thing as a free lunch. So you could say there is a line of separation between editorial and advertising. That has been the case for newspapers, so they're not influenced by the people who advertise with them. But at the same time, you have to consider that the business relationship between the platform companies and the media is so pervasive. It goes in all aspects of the media's business. And now they're even sponsoring and funding not only journalism, but also journalism research, conferences, the like. So, yeah, doesn't that beg the question if the relationship is too manifold to just be a simple, you know, we can keep this separate kind of thing. So, to sum this up, and I hope we have a stimulating debate with the audience, I think there should be great caution about this tech money, about the tech funding. It might be better if the tech moguls decide to favor journalism, than to at least put it in some kind of foundation with a serious independent oversight. I mean, Google D&I has a council, but still that is corporate money structured in a corporate way. It's not, you know, given for good. And publishers should try to free themselves from their dependence on big tech's products. So I think we should try to get away as media from Google Analytics, from all the free software suites, from all the stuff that you know is core to their business model, not ours. And that includes, of course, all the tech companies, not just Google, not just Facebook. And you know, final point. The EU Commission made a report about the future of the media. They unfortunately put AI and blockchain into the title of that report. But one of the takeaways, the EU Commission spoke with many people in the media industry, with many people who have interesting things to say, and it concluded that there should be a lot more public funding. They talked about a €1 billion fund that is needed for innovation in journalism. I think that is a good idea. I think that would be great if there could be more public investment in the future of journalism. But I'm very much hope to hear you all contribute to this debate and how we move forward. Is someone here to collect questions from the audience? Otherwise, I think I'm going to do that myself.
There's one.
Okay. Great.
Thank you. That's really some amazing research, and thank you for doing this. I'm a co-founder of a civic tech NGO that got this DNA funding 3 times so far. And I think it's really important to consider that I come from Slovenia, and it's basically a group of friends that has this civic tech NGO, and it's not so easy to get other funding. And we applied, the only other funding we got so far was from the National Endowment for Democracy, which is also US money, and there is no other way to get any funding. My question was, when we applied for that money for the first time, I said like, okay, I don't think this is okay really, but there was no other way to have sustainability, I guess. Especially if you come from Slovenia, it's not really so much money for whatever projects you want to do, and Soros money is only enough for maybe 2 institutions, and that's it. At the same time, my problem at the moment is that I realize that we are not doing projects that are critical of Google. We're not a classical media company, but an open source software organization, let's say like this. We produce open source software, and we do also a report which is not being funded by Google. But we already, since the beginning, that was always done for free, and it was not part of what we were funded for. So what I find interesting that the first time we got the money, it was the big project, and it was for Parlameter, which is parliamentary data analysis and visualization tool. And our business model was better democracy. And back then I thought about, oh wow, that's interesting. Like, you basically get money for that kind of business model, but how I see it now, it's to basically to make countries more legible, and doing that, enabling Google to have more control over countries that implement this tool, basically to see how the discourse in the parliament is evolving, and to see what are the rules and regulations that are being actually changed somewhere. So. I'm not sure if I really have a question. I just wanted to point this out, that like it's in a way it's the only money you can get sometimes, but on the other hand it's not so great. It's no strings attached, but I don't think this is really how it is. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's a very fair point you're making, that very often there is no funding available, and they do offer money. I think it's important not to, I don't want to, come on my high horse and say you should not do that. I think it's important to point out that most of the money we looked at, most of the D&I money went to large, old, established media corporations that might as well have paid for their own stuff. And they took the money because they could, not because they needed it. I think it would be quite admirable if Google would fund only non-profit, small media organizations that really need the money in a way that is completely transparent and that completely takes their corporate and business interests out of the equation. Mm-hmm. That certainly would be something different. But the thing we're talking about right now, I showed you the slide, most of the money goes to the largest media companies. The East-West European split is, I think, quite telling. Yeah.
And I just want to add that the experience I made is exactly the same. So the large publishers were applying for it not because they cannot afford any other kind of funding, just because it's so easy. So this is maybe a difference, and also, as you said, it's the traditional media legacy, the daily newspaper, which have to cover topics like politics and technology, which are crucial topics and becoming bigger and bigger. And if at the same time you get from these companies, which cause the biggest problem to democracy, also getting the money, I think this has an impact on the reader's trust, and that's actually our critiques.
I'm really sorry, you guys. I was gone for a moment, stepping out. So moving on with the Q&A session, we have a microphone in the middle aisle. So when there is a question, you can also go there. That would be much more appreciated. No?
There's someone there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, then I will come to you with the microphone, because it's much more preferable for the guys watching the stream or later at the recording.
Okay, so I asked myself, what are the opportunities? So is it just only dependence, or have media maybe qualities that tech companies lack? So they see that they're missing something, so valuable content, and their product becomes better if they support good journalism. So is journalism only the victim, or is there some opportunity for tech companies to also improve journalism in their interest and to keep independent journalism alive?
Yeah.
Okay, then I might, thank you. I think it's a very good question. Well, I think in some ways that the relationship between tech and journalism could or should be somehow mutually beneficial. It has never been easier to consume media to have access to different sources. It's also easier now to find things you wouldn't have otherwise read. So in some ways, the advent of Google and Facebook was also the breakup of the stranglehold of national large conglomerates over media distribution and the media most of us consumed. And I think that is exciting and it needs to be celebrated at the same time. Replacing the media mogul of old, the Rupert Murdoch, with Mark Zuckerberg is not really anything we would benefit from in the long run. And I think we need to have a lot more vibrant, diverse range of platforms and technologies, stuff that is open and accessible to everyone, and also distributes to everyone. So I think we're a long way off from that vision, and I'd like to see more conversations about how we can bring it about.
Okay, we have a question here in the middle at the microphone.
Yes, I would actually disagree with one of your conclusions about the decline in in visits from Facebook to news sites. We see, for example, in America, a big distrust in the common media, well, in the mainstream media, as some of them might call it, and a big rise in alternative media. I guess what I'm saying with this is that the funding is probably one of the few reasons, one of the only possibilities to gain.
You have to come a little bit closer to the microphone, I think.
Okay.
So you were saying the possibilities to gain?
Yeah, well, the abilities to gain a big funding, because it's not possible anymore over basically the independent person who would pay for these articles themselves. And to the point of the likeliness to write an article in favor of Google, since you can get the monetary, the funding more than once, it would be probably good for the people, for the newspapers who are actually writing these articles, to be in favor of Google's to perhaps gain an advantage if they reapply for these fundings.
Could you come again with could you formulate that as a question?
No, I guess I'm just making a point to these single points. Would you agree with this?
I'm not sure I really understood it. If these publishers are applying it several rounds for the Google News initiative?
Yes. You said they can receive more than once the funding from Google, but I imagine you have to apply another time to get the funding again. So I guess you're probably favorable for Google to take you as the newspaper if you write an advantage article, if they don't say it specifically.
I think you're quite right. I think that the Google News initiative helps to establish a personal relationship between the company and the publishers, and that is of course reinforced not only by the funding but also by the conferences, all kinds of events that they attend. So there's really a social ecosystem also where whatever council decides on doling out the money will say, well, we know these guys, we know their company, we like them, we would like to give them money, and in some ways it's all very chummy.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions? You can come to the microphone there, or I can come to you with the microphone. Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm Marian. I come from one of these old-fashioned big players in Germany. I come from the ARD. And I just want to make a point. I think one of the problems is that we are all getting used to that news and content and good information in the internet is for free. And we are not keen on paying. We have to struggle with the Rundfunkbeitrag in Germany, and I would be interested how many here in the room pay their internet, their Rundfunkbeitrag. But we have to to strengthen the non-profit or the public publishers or media companies, if you want to be independent from the tech firms, I think. But that's the debate that isn't very strong in Germany and not in the EU, I think.
Well, here I think what we see now, there's going to be kind of a correction going on. So subscribe with Google is one thing that Google make it finally easier for the publisher to subscribe directly. And yeah, what we need to change are the habits that everything is for free. And Google and Facebook were the main drivers for this habit, for this mentality, for this. You can get everything for free by the first click. So now they need to correct this whole. These habits we have with the subscribe of Google, and also Facebook is now also thinking about a dedicated news tab with the subscribing licensing fee, so that subscribers, publishers with quality journalism can now publish directly in Facebook. So it's maybe going to be a kind of a Netflix for publishers within Facebook. But once more, we're dependent. We're within an ecosystem of the two biggest tech companies, and I don't know if this is a healthy development, but I'm totally agreeing we need to, and I think I'm a bit more optimistic. I think it's going to change. People are more aware for it that they also should pay for quality content in the internet. I mean, my employer is an example for that. Republik, so we're entirely reader funded and advertising free. We're now in our second year. I hope we're going to survive a bit longer. So it's possible to ask people to pay or to subscribe for something they really appreciate. And I think it's a little change going on. But yeah, we need much more also support, I think, from the public authorities, from grants, but from the politicians or from the authorities at the end, and not from Google and Facebook.
And from you all, of course. So we need you all to pay for news. By donation, by subscription. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Okay, would you mind to step to the microphone? That's nice, thanks.
Hi, I'm Carla from Bertelsmann Stiftung, and I think it's great to see some numbers on this, to get a feeling for the extent of the problem. But like you just said, this is just the beginning of research on this issue. So I was wondering whether, if money and time wasn't an issue, what kind of questions would you like to look at? What are the research questions that you think more research should happen on?
Yeah, so I mentioned 2 times what would be interesting in this context is how did media coverage change about this topic from the publishers, from the journalists? Do they have, this dilemma in their head, they should be more neutral about this topic? Did that change? I have the suspicion, yes, but I have no clear evidence about that. And also, how does this affect readers' trust? Like, I think the trust is more and more in value, which is very crucial for readers, like they subscribe somewhere that they really believe in. And when we published this piece about the Swiss publishers getting money from the Google News Initiative, some readers were really shocked. I mean, they were writing, was that true? I've never heard about that. And so how can the journalists, the tech media reporters hold big tech companies accountable and do this kind of reporting they want to do? So I think these are the 2 questions I would have further research about an investigation. Thank you.
Can we take one more?
Sure, yeah, sure. Is there another? Okay. I'm coming to you.
I have a question in terms of what you think is going to happen in the future, but also maybe a parallel with Google offering Google grants, where they give, as in the US, they give nonprofits $10,000 a month in free Google ads. But they have slowly implemented so many strings that make it almost impossible for a small nonprofit to take advantage of it. One being that you have to have a good enough success rate that you have to hire a professional. But they've also made the minimum bid $2, right? So there's so many stipulations to it. It sounds like a wonderful thing. And then it turns out that a small nonprofit ends up wasting a lot of time and effort. And I'm wondering if maybe you see that this is the direction we're going in.
That's a great example. I haven't heard about that, actually. I think what we're seeing, we're still in the honeymoon phase of the relationship between the Google, Facebook, and the publishers. It's still very friendly and cordial, but also product dominance of the companies is not yet solidified and absolute. But if Google, Apple, Facebook, or whatever other company really manages to dominate the market for news subscription after having already conquered the market for ads, I could very well see them getting a lot more forceful with the publishers. So now it's all free money and cool conferences, but we'll see how that goes in 5 years.
We still have time for questions, so when there is another thing you want to ask, yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Dario.
And how convenient you're standing directly at the microphone.
I'm Dario from Foodwatch, a non-profit organization here in Germany, and we actually see with the Google grants is a big problem also for us. But another question on Facebook and their motivation to really fund media, because you just mentioned, and we all have noticed that actually Facebook really limits the news media, but also other fan pages and their output, because the private life should be emphasized. So what is their interest to push media and also to have a subscription channel on the pages? I don't really get the motive. Maybe you could dwell on that.
Frankly, I don't know. I don't know exactly. Well, for me, it's a damage control program, because now they see that Google was establishing now this relationship to the publishers and are better evaluated by the publishers. So they think, okay, after this whole fake news debate, we need to act. So we need to deprioritize the news or everything what was called news. Apparently, I don't know. Maybe you have read the article in the Wired magazine just 3 weeks ago. The editors were writing that actually the Facebook engineers, they had no a clear definition of what news are. They were just they made a subsumption of anything which is considering as politics, tragedy, or crime. So they had no clear definition what news are. And now I think Facebook is starting to think about that more and more. But yeah, I don't know. I was asking Facebook yesterday. I was sending an email exactly for this question because I knew this question will come. So they could not tell me. They said, well, the strategic focus on privacy and on the technical integration of all these different messengers in the future, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be maybe after tomorrow. I don't know, next week. It's not going to be something it's not going to be very, very soon. And that's why they want to, and also they said they put an effort on local news publishers because they think this is something that should really support them. And yeah, so we will see how this goes together. I asked them also if we maintain as a fan page a Facebook group with our community, with our subscribers, and we have this posting and the engagement is high, and yeah, now we need to think about how can we reach a broader audience, but at the same time it's in a closed channel, it's in a private channel. So what should we do now? So does Facebook us now want not to invest anymore into these postings or not? And they could not answer this question clearly, so we will see in the future.
Okay, I see we have another question here at the microphone. Could you please go quite close to the microphone so that we can hear you all good? Thanks.
Sure. Is this close enough, do you think? Okay, so my question is about a company that maybe hasn't been mentioned so often, which is Apple, which has now offered a news product. And what do you think this means in the sort of work with all tech companies and publishers in the future, when you're at one time, as you were saying, reporting about them, at the other time also being a partner? And it's not just about being part of, I don't know, like the Wall Street Journal is like, you know, added 50 people so that they're producing Apple News only content, but also for companies that have apps. Everybody has an app that they want you to get on your phone. That means you're already complicit in working with these big platform companies, and you don't want to offend them. They'll deplatform you. Like, what's the future model of working together? Do organizations need to build walls so that they are separating editorial and, I don't know, tech? Or what do you see as a possible solution?
I mean, I think it's quite interesting, the example with Apple, because with Apple Music, they already had the major impact on content creation. I think that this question of the question you were posing about should we separate that, or how to structure exactly a relationship with a company like that, it's a tricky one, because really as soon as you cohabit and you need them for something, you become dependent in some ways. I was going to make another point, but maybe I kind of...
Separate, yeah. Well, there was already an experiment from Facebook did that. Sorry, I know more about what Facebook has done in this matter, but I know that Facebook has made these experiments in different countries, I think also Slovenia or Serbia, and where they said, okay, we take the news out and put them in a separate feed. And what happened then was actually quite shocking. So there was a huge drop of traffic, especially for opposition media in these countries, and not state-owned media, and which were very dependent on Facebook. So I don't know, and yeah, then they stopped this experiment also because they got negative press on it in the New York Times. But maybe it's a matter of changing habits again and saying, okay, so we have the news feed or the feed of friends postings or whatever, and have a dedicated tab, but cannot answer that what is the right
Thank you.
movement.
Okay, we have time for yet another question. Thank you that you're stepping out and going to the microphone.
Okay, you mentioned briefly that...
can you come a little bit closer to the microphone,
okay.
please?
And can you also identify yourself? I think it would be interesting.
I'm Christoph Dietz from the Forum Media and Development, which is a forum from 20 different organizations, from Reporters Without Frontiers to Deutsche Welle and many others. So we are working in the Global South, and the question from... you mentioned briefly that the European experience serves as an example for the rest of the world. So my question is, are there already concrete data from Africa, Asia or Latin America?
I must honestly say we haven't looked into it at all, but I think it would be important to do so, because Facebook, for instance, does 0 rating in many countries. That means when you have mobile data that is for free when it is for Facebook, and that has a massive impact on the way people consume news. It has a massive impact on disinformation, and we don't know a lot about that yet. And what the impact of practices like 0 rating is on journalism in the Global South is anyone's good guess so far. So I think actually that could be a really interesting project to look at.
Are there any other questions? We have about 2.5 minutes left. When that's not the case, then I would have a question to you.
Great.
Since I just recently read that Firefox is developing an own sandbox to put Facebook in, so you're not disturbed anymore, you can't be monitored in your browser experience on a desktop. Do you think that could have any impact, or are we still doomed with the mobile revolution because it's on our cell phone?
Yeah, so I think that the whole business model of these companies build on targeted advertising, which means surveillance and monitoring of users. And if it is no longer possible, technically or legally, to do surveillance on users, their business case in some way is a lot less persuasive. And it opens a room for a different, old school form of targeted advertising, which is putting advertising in a paper, and by knowing who the readership of the paper is, you can target these users in a privacy-friendly way. So the old print advertising was actually the most privacy-friendly form of advertising there is. I think that in some ways, taking away the most nefarious ways of the platform companies, taking away their power to track and monitor us, would actually open a lot of interesting business models on the internet, and would breathe life into whole industries.
I don't know how the market share of Firefox, well, it depends also on the market share. I mean, if this would happen at Google Chrome, I think they might have an impact on the...
Yeah, true. True. Yeah, this is true. Then I would like to hear a big round of applause for our two great speakers.
We